A Saka, Bukayo Saka, la pelota para el taconazo. ¡Gol! ¡Qué golazo! ¡Gol, gol, gol, gol! Del Arsenal arrancó la moto Bukayo Saka. El servicio para Merino, que dibujó el taconazo. Apareció en el segundo palo Martinelli para empujar. Es el segundo del Arsenal. 28 de partido. ¿Cómo juega este Arsenal? Ipswich Town 0, Arsenal 2.
Este gol es...
Gabriel Martinelli. Gabriel Martinelli. Gabi. 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 Arsenal. Gabi. Gabi. Gabriel Martinelli. Se acabó.
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, a goodly morning to you.
Goodly morning, Andrew. How you doing?
I'm good. Light on Easter eggs, I'll say that, but apart from that...
Is that a complaint?
No, not really. Easter eggs are kind of crap, you know?
Right, yeah. There are some people... I'm going to name and shame, actually. Alex Kajelski, formerly the editor of The Athletic, now I believe something mad like the director of sports for the BBC. He loves Easter egg chocolate above all other chocolate.
That's insane.
And when it's Easter, he waits until, tomorrow, I guess, or perhaps even today, when the Easter eggs get heavily discounted.
Yeah.
And if you're in the corridors of the BBC over the next month or two, you may see him walking past, peeling the foil away from a giant Easter egg and taking a bite out of it, because that's his chocolate of choice.
That is mad. It's literally the worst chocolate, is the chocolate that's on the floor and they make the eggs out of it, They have to tempt you.
It's this chocolate is unusable. We discovered this chocolate has been contaminated with feces or something, animal feces. And they're like, don't worry, we have a use for that. Put it in the injection mold to make the Easter eggs from.
Exactly. They have to actually tempt you into buying an Easter egg by giving you a mug or something with it to offset the terribleness of the chocolate. Do they still do that? You go buy a Crunchy or a Mars... Easter egg, and they give you a mug as well. It's sort of well, listen, we know you're eating rat shit here, but here's a mug.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I was quite lucky. I did get a couple of Easter-related chocolates, but they're quite high-end.
Oh, of course.
There's some, do you know what I mean? There's some Muswell Hill boutique chocolate. So they're no major brand. I haven't eaten them yet, but that makes me believe that maybe they might actually taste nice.
Right. I only eat Lindt. That's it.
Yeah.
Not actual Lindt, but isn't there a chocolate brand called Lindt with a D rather than Lindt, which is the sort of fluff that collects in your belly button?
I will only eat Ferrero Rocher served to me
on a platter.
On a platter by the ambassador himself.
With this Ferrero Rocher, you are really spoiling us, ambassador. Like that.
I tell you. What about who was spoiling us yesterday in Ipswich? Arsenal, with all their goals.
Oh,
that's why we're professional podcasters.
People think that, was just off the cuff, but actually we've been in discussion for about 3 hours this morning trying to work out the best way.
We rehearsed all that stuff.
Yeah.
I remember a few weeks ago saying, on the April 21st show, shall we do the rat shit stuff?
Yeah.
And you were like, they will love that. They will eat that up. But you better hone and perfect it over the coming weeks.
That's it.
And boy did we.
Boy, did we. Yes, and Arsenal did give us 4 delicious
They laid
eggs.
4 beautiful eggs. Leandro, seeing those 2 eggs plop out of Leandro Trossard, those golden eggs, GOAL.
Very good again.
No wonder this was so long in the making.
It's amazing stuff. It is. Just
imagine Leo Trossard squatting down.
And then hatching the eggs as well.
Yeah, plop the eggs hatch, and out comes a tiny academy player.
Do you know what? I'm just thinking now, I'm listening to this and I'm hoping with all of my heart that poorly drawn Arsenal is inspired to do something from this opening, because
if not, then what?
Then what are we even doing anymore, James? What are we even doing anymore? If we can't get some animated goodness from this bit, then who knows? Well, listen. You know, it's been quite a week, in fairness, you know, from the highs of the Bernabeu to the even more highs of Portman Road, beating Ipswich 4-0 after beating Real Madrid 2-1 away. You know, pales into insignificance, I think.
Which did you prefer, Andrew? It's like choosing between your children, isn't it?
I prefer this one because that one is better. Obviously Real Madrid, but we scored twice as many goals yesterday, so it's a tough old decision. I mean, you were obviously out there in Madrid, and listen, we've talked a lot about Madrid since those games, but you know, as an experience for you in the stands, albeit in the press box, must have been a hell of a trip, a hell of a journey. And you know, I know what it's like to see Arsenal win in the Bernabeu, but that was nearly 20 years ago. But it is quite the thing, isn't it? Because of you know, the way they perceive themselves, the way maybe they even are perceived and acclaimed in European football, etc., etc. But to go there and do what we did, and do it in the style in which we did it over the course of 2 legs. We'll get to Ipswich, of course, but I did just want to pick your brains on that a bit. You must have had a good old trip out there.
Yeah, it was amazing, and you're right. The way they perceive themselves, I mean. There was almost a presumption on their part that they would go through. It was kind of extraordinary to witness the layers of confidence that kind of existed between, you know, players and fans, and who knows, maybe there was a bit of self-delusion in there, or maybe a bit of front, but there were a lot of people very convinced that this was possible, that you know, the remontada was on. And I have to be honest that you know, when you're out there, that does begin to sort of affect you and influence you. I remember messaging you being like, I mean, they're sort of convincing me. I mean, they're really, really sure they can do this. So, yeah, there was that little seed of doubt certainly planted in my mind. But obviously the game went the way it did. I think some of the mythology around this Madrid team was kind of exposed to be just that, really. And I thought Arsenal were outstanding and superb, and I was sad not to be in the away end, but also glad that I didn't have to watch the game through a net.
Yeah, it's the worst. It really is the worst, you know.
It is. I mean, actually, because you're sort of behind the goal as well, you're kind of actually watching it through 2 nets, arguably.
Yeah.
It is a strange scenario, but I don't think it dampened the mood of the travelling fans at all.
No.
And a good time was had by all. And I'm just so glad that Gabriel Martinelli got that winning goal, because I think, listen, drawing out there would have been a perfectly good result, and we would still have really lustily celebrated progression. But to beat them home and away is pretty special, actually. That's something we didn't manage in 2006.
That's true.
And I just remember this moment where Martinelli was played through on goal, and he had maybe like half a yard on his defender, and I think I said out loud something like, "Do you want to be a hero?" And he did want to be a hero.
He did.
And yeah, it's just a great moment and a great night, and we're still talking about it now. I do suspect that, you know, in the fullness of time, we'll be talking about it for a long time yet.
Yes.
A long time yet.
Yes.
And the Madrid fans were upset, Andrew, weren't they?
Yeah, I'm sure they were. I mean, you would have seen that more firsthand than I did. I got a message from Andrew Allen, who was at the game, but was in the Madrid end. And where's the message? They did not appreciate me celebrating that Martinelli goal. Had a hand around my throat. Lol. And that was,
Wow.
that was Andrew's message. But you could see it even with the first goal. You could see in the first goal, when you look at the replays, there's some people in the corner, some Arsenal fans in the corner, who have no compunction about standing up in their Arsenal shirts and celebrating the goal. So, Arsenal fans, much like the first game back in 2006, I remember when we scored, you could see the Arsenal fans, a smattering of Arsenal fans in the Madrid part of the stadium, quite happy to celebrate. So
I think a few infiltrated. There was a guy right in front of the press box actually who had, I think, like a sweatshirt on or a hoodie or something. And as soon as the full-time whistle went, he managed to retain his composure until then. But he whipped off his hoodie to reveal an Arsenal shirt underneath.
Good man.
And it was a great moment. I sort of imagined like the Superman music playing in the background as he sort of wrestled this top off his body. But yeah, fair play to everyone who went out there and certainly made Madrid very aware that there were a lot of Arsenal fans in town in that Plaza Mayor Square. Sure. And I'm just sorry I had to do some work because it meant that I couldn't be out celebrating all night.
Enjoy the festivities anyway. Listen, maybe there'll be another big European night or two along the way that we can enjoy and perhaps enjoy and join in with those celebrations. Maybe a big celebration. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, and let's talk a little bit then about the game yesterday against Ipswich. I mean, it's one of those where, having drawn the previous two games, Arsenal need to be just slightly aware of what's happening below them in the Premier League table and take 3 points. I think we were expected to take 3 points against, an Ipswich side who really have struggled at times this season. But the team was quite interesting. Now, part of the team selection could well have been just fatigue, and just managing a few players after what was a heavy night in Madrid in terms of work rate and everything else. But it was interesting to note that the midfield trio was Rice, Merino, Odegaard, and then Leandro Trossard in the middle of Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli. When you think about what we need to do in the first leg against PSG because of the absence of Thomas Partey because he's suspended after that yellow card, maybe it was Mikel Arteta just having a little look at this combination?
I think so. I mean, Declan Rice, I read, hadn't played at the base of midfield since, I think, late January, maybe early February. It was an Aston Villa game. So, it made sense maybe to have a look at that. And Trossard in up front is the kind of logical change. The fullbacks, I think, was probably a bit more about physical demands, right, on those players in this period. And also Ben White just needing some game time so that he can be considered as a starter. I think we all discussed what the Madrid team might be, and certainly, Ben White was in a few 11s, but I think there would have been some reservations about using him just because of how little football he's played. So these were really valuable minutes for him.
Yeah, the Zinchenko came in on the other side for Lewis Skelly. I thought it was really interesting to see straight away when the game kicked off, Ipswich said, right, we're going to press high. We're going to try and force Arsenal into a mistake early on, see if we can do a bit of a smash and grab on Arsenal. You could see straight away. And Ciso, I think it was right up on David Raya within like 2-3 minutes. Arsenal just kept the ball and Ipswich were like, fuck, shit. We're going to have to sit back and defend a bit here. The way that Arsenal exerted control in the opening stages of this game, opposition notwithstanding, I thought was very impressive. I think 9 minutes in, they flashed up a graphic on Sky Sports that Arsenal had 95% possession. It's kind of extraordinary at this level, you can dominate, but 95% of the ball in the opening 9 minutes is really something.
Yeah, amazing stats, really. And that Mikel Arteta this morning will be looking at that 5% angrily. How he eradicates that 5 wasteful percent where we didn't have the ball. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned David Raya. He did make one really good interception. I think it was about 5 minutes into the game, which I thought was really impressive to be that alert. His positioning was really high, really active, really engaged. at that stage in a game which Arsenal were totally dominating. I just think that's a really positive aspect to his game. That ability to snuff out danger from a deeper position. And yeah, it was a very, very dominant start, and the pattern for the game was established, really.
Yes, the opening goal came in the 14th minute. Ipswich had sort of left a lot of space in midfield. You can see, before Zinchenko plays the ball to him, you can see Martin Odegaard standing with his arms in the air going, give me the ball, and there's literally nobody anywhere near him, which, even if Martin Odegaard's form has not been where we would like it to be this season, that doesn't seem like a great tactic from Ipswich to me.
It's not ideal, is it? But yeah, it was... Zinchenko switch basically across the pitch, which was a bit of a theme, I think. Certainly in that first half, we were using that quite a lot, and there was an unusual degree of space, I think, that we were finding with those overlaps in wide areas. And is this the most generous assist awarded of all time to Martin Odegaard?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those where, people have mixed views on stats, right? Some people anyway. And they might say, well, stats don't tell the full story. And, that's true. And we've often said that they help augment your understanding of the game rather than tell you the full story, of course. But in this instance, I think what we have is a technical assist for Martin Odegaard, but the moral assist, the rightful assist goes to Bukayo Saka, because Odegaard took it on, played it outside to Saka. Saka with his right foot into the box. It brushes the underside of Martin Odegaard's boot, and then Leandro Trossard does quite well, I think, to apply the finish. He's sort of falling over. There are defenders there. He puts it through the defender's legs and into the back of the net. I will say the only thing positive I've got to say about Ipswich, by the way, is that they have a very pleasing net sound. That metallic net sound that we've often talked about when a goal is scored. It's very evident on that first goal from Trossard. So that's the only good thing I have to say about Ipswich today. But yes, it's really a Bukayo Saka assist, but it goes down on the books to Martin Odegaard.
I'm just looking at the league table, Andrew. I think if they win their next 5 games by about 4 goals, then we could keep that metallic net sound in next year's Premier League.
I don't know. I think are they not down now? Are they not officially down? Or do they have?
Am I doing bad maths? I think if they won all their games and West Ham lost all of theirs, they could stay up on goal difference. Yeah,
the swings and roundabouts of football and professional sport are quite something, because look, Arsenal won yesterday. I always want Arsenal to win, but I saw someone make the point or produce the stat, if you want to call it that by beating Ipswich, we made it impossible for Manchester United or Tottenham to get relegated, which is a shame. It's a shame.
It is a shame. It is a shame. And, I do feel let down by Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton this year.
Yeah,
because they robbed us of the Spurs United relegation double.
Oh, wow.
My real hope is that those sides don't get to the magical 40 points. You know what I mean? That would be just a really lovely. And weirdly, they could be facing off in a European final this season, which I don't know what that says about the Premier League, but there you go.
Yeah, I don't either.
Anyhow, I love the finish from Trossard. I actually think that... I've got quite a few comparisons with old Arsenal players that occurred to me during this game.
Okay.
But around him, the sort of efficiency of that finish, just finding the most economical way to get the ball in the net, it was a bit Eduardo-y. And I actually thought that with the second goal as well, just really good close control, and just a shot that's not massively aesthetically pleasing, but equally is incredibly difficult to save.
I know what you mean. I find him such a strange player, Trossard.
Yeah, he is, I think.
There are such moments of quality. He's capable of such moments of quality and decisiveness in the box and around the box. But then there are other times where I'm going, what are you doing? What's in your head in this exact moment when you try and do something that doesn't come off? Or... he'll try something that you think, well, I know technically he's capable of doing that, but he just gets it all wrong. Like little fluffs of control or sort of almost like a golfer topping a shot,
I think, if I was guessing, and it is a guess, it's proper COD psychology, but like I get the sense with Trossard that he's a person who's like base level of confidence and self-belief is very, very high.
Yeah.
And there are moments when technically he might not be on the very top of his game, but he still attempts stuff that many players would only attempt when they were flying. Do
That's
you know what
fair.
I mean?
Yeah. I know.
I think that's my guess at why he is like that. But this was a good day for him. I mean, obviously both the goals, but maybe the most impressive moment of the match was in the build-up to the second goal, where he brought that ball under control on the wing.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was a William Saliba kind of lofted pass over to the right-hand side. Trossard took it down, played it to Saka. It wasn't like an easy ball for Saka either, by the way. He sort of had to lob it a bit for Saka, who took it down and drove into the box. But yeah, I think that's a lovely piece of play from Trossard. Lovely piece of play from Bukayo Saka as well. Right-footed cross. Mikel Merino's movement inside the box is really good. The flick is super smart, isn't it? It's really, really clever and perfectly executed. And Gabriel Martinelli is there at the back post to make it 2-0.
Yeah, beautiful goal, actually.
Gabi,
Yeah, beautiful goal. And brilliant, really, for all round from Arsenal perspective. And I suppose a bit of an indication of some of the flexibility that Trossard does bring when he plays in that number 9 area. He was effectively in what we would associate with like the right back spot when he brings that ball under control.
He certainly roamed around the pitch a bit more, let's say, than Mikel Merino does when he plays in that role. I don't know if that's just, again, Trossard backing himself to be impactful wherever he is, or going a bit rogue. I'm not 100% sure, but it was sort of hard to pin him down, because obviously you knew he was the guy who was playing as the 9, but he kept popping up in areas where you didn't necessarily expect him to be.
That's true. And I do think he's a very different type of forward to Merino for some obvious reasons. And another goal that came down the right-hand side. I mean, this was the first game in a long time, wasn't it, that we had White, Odegaard and Saka together on the right. And we just posed so much threat on that flank. Brilliant goal and brilliant flick from Merino. My old Arsenal player comparison for Merino.
Here we go.
I've sort of been keen to ask Mikel Arteta about this, but an appropriate moment has not arisen. But there's something very Giroud-y about him around the box, I think.
Yes, I know what you mean, actually. I know what you mean. There's a sort of tall guy intelligence. I'm not quite sure how to sort of frame it any better than that. But Giroud, he wasn't the quickest guy, but his movement inside the box was really, really good. How many times did he score that little near post flicky goal, because his movement was sharper. And I wrote about this a little bit in the blog today, and I'm not sure, because I didn't, obviously watch a huge amount of Mikel Merino when he played for Real Sociedad, but I do wonder if the intelligence of his movement in attacking areas has always been this good, or has it gone up a slight level because of the redeployment of him as an attacker, and maybe just sort of coaching him in a slightly different way because he's had to operate and play a different role. Maybe,
yeah, because he is really playing that left 8 role as a kind of supporting second striker at times. Maybe that's what was always envisaged for that position, and Kai Havertz, way back when. But I just on the Giroud comparison, I feel like he started adding those little wall passes and flicks and little one-touch passes into the penalty area, and there's just something very, very fluid about him in that final third. And he's a big guy, as you say, not necessarily the quickest, but really good movement. Makes those near post runs. Every time I watch him, I just get a wonderful whiff of Olivier Giroud at the moment. And this touch for the Martinelli, I mean, I don't know if he knows exactly where Martinelli is or if it's just kind of a bit of synchronicity and, but it's the right thing to do. He keeps the pass going in the right direction and Martinelli is there and tucks it away.
Yeah.
And kind of feels like game over at that point. Arsenal have been so dominant, so in control, and they've actually capitalised and got the goals, which has been an issue for them at times this season.
Yeah.
I mean, I just felt like Ipswich aren't great, let's be clear, but with Saka and Martinelli back in this team, the threat level was so much higher.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the goal again to see if he has as he's going into the box, he's looking to see where Martinelli is. Then he drives into the box. He doesn't look up again. So I guess he's just banking on Martinelli being in that position if he can execute that flick. But it's just aesthetically a very, very nice goal. And very smart play all round, I
loved it. And Saka's so important again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just absurd, isn't it, that he comes out of the game without a goal or assist, given his contribution to it. But, I don't know how Ipswich felt about his contribution. Let's put it like that, given what was just around the corner.
All right. Well, look, I think something to mention in the build-up to that second goal, when Trossard takes the ball down and plays it to Saka, Leif Davis takes him out off the ball. Mm-hmm. And that says to me that his head is a bit wobbled. He's a bit frustrated with what's going on, maybe frustrated at the season overall. And then he gets a red card, which I don't think he can in any way complain about, or Ipswich, I think, when they watch the replays, something that fans in the stadium aren't privy to. It's maybe reasonable to point out that they're not privy to those replays that we saw, but it is a bad challenge. It's a really ugly tackle, not anywhere near the ball, straight down the back of the Achilles, potentially very, very dangerous. And I'm glad to see that it was punished the way that it was, which is properly with a red card.
Yeah. And the ref gave it on field, right? There was no review. He saw the challenge and I think he took a little beat, didn't he? Just to kind of assess and, maybe just check himself. But he made the right decision. Red card, pure frustration, I think.
Yes.
And, they couldn't really live with Saka. It's funny because he missed that flurry of chances towards the end of the half. And, I felt like in the commentary and stuff that sort of became the story of his 45 minutes. But I think really the story of the 45 minutes was that he was just unplayable. I mean, they couldn't get near him.
Well, that's it. I think, obviously there's concern when a player is subjected to that kind of a challenge, right? Because it's very painful and, like we said, potentially dangerous. It could really, really hurt. But he's back up and the response, I think this says everything you need to know about Bukayo Saka. The response to that challenge from him was to do everything he could to hurt the opposition with the ball, right?
Yeah.
So there was a shot, like literally the next passage of play after play started again. There's a passage of play where he picks up the ball, cuts inside, has a shot which goes just wide. We've seen him score those before. And then there were the other two chances where you would expect him to score. There was one with his left foot, just the keeper to beat. He didn't make the right contact, put it wide.
Lovely Merino flick.
Yeah, again, yeah. And then there was the other one with his right foot that he didn't quite catch the way that you would normally expect him to catch that. Perhaps, in part because he's just had studs down his Achilles, which is sore and painful, and maybe you're not quite fully focused or you're a little bit conscious of your pain in that situation. But, Ipswich are very lucky that they didn't go into that into halftime like 4-0 down with Saka, having scored a couple of goals. I really do think it sums him up perfectly. He tries to hurt the opposition with the ball. They try to hurt him with their studs or however they want to take him out. And his response is, I'll just show you how good I am. And of course, the finishing let him down. You can have that kind of a day. I think I said to you, he's gone a bit Giroud versus Monaco in front of goal. Being slightly facetious, of course, but those are chances that you would normally expect him to score. And that, is just peak Bukayo Saka, right? You're kicking me. I will hurt you with the ball. And, another day he comes in, the job is done at halftime and the game is won because he scored a couple of goals.
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant response. We could have been out of sight really by that point. But with the 10 men, it was still a game where, it was very much under control, wasn't it? And
yeah.
But I'm glad in the second half we were able to kind of push on and punish Ipswich. I must say, I know the fans don't have the benefit of the replays, and I know football fans are football fans, and they're going to do what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of struck by the extent of the booing of Saka.
Well, they were booing him before, like I think I said it in the live blog, like about 3 minutes in, Saka picks up the ball and I write, Ipswich fans booing Saka? Fuck off.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote in the live. That was 3 minutes in. So they're already kind of on his back for whatever reason. Yeah. But yeah, listen, everyone is partisan. Everyone is biased towards their own team. I do find it a little bit irritating when a player is subjected to potentially a very, very damaging tackle and is painted as the villain in the eyes of the opposition fans. But
yeah, and listen,
what can you do though?
It's part of the football atmosphere and part of the banter and all those things. But he's not Ronaldo. Do you know what I mean? Like he's not. There's nothing to dislike really about Bukayo Saka. And let me tell you, when the World Cup rolls around in a year's time, most of those Ipswich fans will be praising him to the hilt and thanking him for bailing England out all over again, probably. It's just I just find it odd. Like, the only way he could have avoided that booing was by having his leg broken, basically. Yeah. And it's like, that doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, but then, let's not forget that even if you do have your leg broken, like Aaron Ramsey, you can still be subjected to boos by opposition fans. So, yeah, it's one of those things. I think, in fairness, the response from Saka was great, and the response from the away fans, by the way, was fantastic as well, singing about Ipswich going down. What were they? What's the song? Second Again, Ole Ole, which appears to be directed at us from every Premier League team we play at this moment in time, whether they're in mid-table or about to be relegated. The Arsenal fans respond with Championship Ole Ole was very good as well. So
yes, I mean, we're en route to our third Champions League semi-final in our history, and Ipswich on the precipice of their third Premier League relegation in history. So
which says plenty.
They've not had a lot to cheer this year. I guess that's my explanation.
That is fair. All right. Well, second half then. Saka came out and came off, I think, about 10 minutes in, was it? It was about 10 minutes when he made, 10, 12 minutes in, he made a couple of subs. Ethan Nwaneri.
Got enough ice, Bukayo?
Got enough ice. Nwaneri and Lewis Skelly on, Saka Merino came off. I think it was just one of those halves of football, wasn't it? Your friend, Mr. Christopher Sutton, Senior.
Great to hear from him.
Great to hear from him. But on Sky Sports saying, this is one of those scenarios where football should have a rule where they can just say, the game is done. We'll go home. Everyone can go home.
They have that in Serie A, I think. I don't shake hands at half time.
Yeah, it's over.
Just play this out.
Yeah, I don't often agree with Chris Sutton, but I sort of did there because of just, everybody
He's on his best
knew.
behaviour now, Andrew. We've put him on alert. He knows.
Yeah.
If he steps out of the line.
His future grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, by the way, are going to be very sad with him. But look, Arsenal controlled it. Ipswich were just like, we're beaten here. And I think it's kind of the perfect scenario from an Arsenal perspective in that we're playing against 10 men. They didn't do anything other than sit in and try and defend, which they did pretty well. We didn't really get out of second gear. We've got a game in midweek against Crystal Palace before we play PSG the following week. And I think it's kind of exactly what Mikel Arteta would have wanted, is like, go out there, keep the ball, try and score a couple of goals, don't kill yourselves, don't run yourselves into the ground. I'll make some changes and we'll just go on and win this game.
Yes, it was kind of perfect, I think, Andrew, in that respect. With one obvious exception, and I do have, I mean, perhaps we'll get to it, but I have a bone to pick with Ipswich goalkeeper Alex Palmer.
Yes.
Denying me and the world what we were all hoping for in that second half, a Nathan Butler-Oyedeji goal.
Yes. We'll get to that, of course. Leandro Trossard with a second goal of the game, which you've already talked about in terms of the finish. Gets it nicely out from under his feet. Declan Rice, I think, ends up with the assist for that one after we took a load of short corners. Yeah. Nathan Butler-Oyedeji came on. There was a Martin Odegaard shot which hit the post and rolled across the goal.
Unlucky that was, yeah.
Nwaneri scored via two deflections. I think it hit Dara O'Shea and then cannoned off the arse of another defender and into the back of the net. So Nwaneri, being the purist that he is, chose not to celebrate with any vigour, despite the fact that was his 9th goal of the season. Decent numbers. Can he get into double figures between now and the end of the season? Let's hope so. But he chose not to celebrate because, the deflection.
Those are amazing numbers, I think, given how, relatively how little football he's played.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that he deserves credit on that goal. He, from the minute he received the pass, he was like, I'm going to get a shot off here. And when he did, he got enough power in it to mean that even via two deflections, it still ended up in the back of the net. He sort of bullied the ball into the goal.
Yeah, I mean, if you take deflections, out of the equation, Frank Lampard scored no goals.
Exactly. And he celebrated every single one.
He sure did.
I think that was a good moment for him. And there were some nice moments. Some of the short corner routines. We had a short centre forward, so we went with the short corners.
Yeah. Butler-Oyedeji came on with about 10 minutes to go.
Yeah.
His previous appearance, of course, was when he was thrown. He was waiting for ages and ages and ages on the sideline to come on, and the ball didn't go out of play. He came on about 30 seconds later. The final whistle went. So he got a few extra minutes. Nice, I think. A nice little moment for him. His only touch when he came on was that sort of instinctive snapshot which the keeper touched over the bar. Clearly a big spoil sport, Alex Palmer.
I know. It was a decent effort, wasn't it? Just sort of clipped it towards goal. Unfortunately, a bit too close to the goalie and tipped over the bar. Had that gone in, I would have been down the Armoury this morning getting Butler-Oyedeji on the back of my shirt.
Your NBO shirt, yeah.
Yeah, alas. But anyway, in absolute seriousness, a nice cameo for him and recognition for the part he has played. It happens behind closed doors and we haven't really seen him, but he's, been with the group the whole time, training with the first team. And that's a fantastic experience for him. And I'm sure he's revelled in it and loved it and loved travelling to some of these big games. But to actually get on the pitch in a Premier League match and to have a little eye-catching moment that he can put in his show reel, at the end of the season when he's looking for a permanent club, I don't think that'll hurt him. So,
no.
Yeah, a nice moment.
Yeah, for sure. He's grown up at Arsenal, I think, come all the way through the academy. He's 22 now, so he's not necessarily a kid, but even just that little bit of extra profile when it comes to the summer might help him, get a permanent move, as you say, somewhere else.
Definitely.
So look, we just needed to win a game. We needed to win this game. We needed it to be relatively uncomplicated. Beyond the Bukayo Saka incident, there didn't appear to be any apparent issues with fitness or injuries. The manager was able to, bring some players off, give some players a bit of a rest, give some minutes to some players as well. So Partey didn't play, Timber didn't play. You'd expect there to be, maybe a couple of changes for the Crystal Palace game, given we've got 6 days, I think it is, between Palace and the first leg against PSG. So it's about managing this week, and the first part of this week has gone as well as we would have hoped.
Yeah, and I think the way the fixture list has fallen now is probably to our advantage. We don't have a game at the weekend, which is probably great for Arteta ahead of that first leg against PSG. So curious to see how he'll play it against Palace. Yeah, I think there will be, as he said, a couple of changes. But then after that, I don't know, they might even be allowed a day off or something like that. So we shall see. I'm just having a look at the Paris Saint-Germain.
They play Nantes tomorrow
night,
and then
they
they're
play on Friday.
They're at home against Nice on Friday night. So they've obviously had their fixture moved a little bit forward to give them more prep time. Does anyone know, do Nice have any kind of bastards?
Like a hatchet man.
A proper fucking hatchet man, you know. Do they have that guy in their squad? And I'm not saying I advocate in any way for, you know, let's say a Leif Davis on Bukayo Saka kind of challenge. Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. Not saying that. But, you know, I'm just curious.
But if he was armed with an actual hatchet.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Some sort of axe.
Yeah.
Then we possibly could approve. I mean, can we transfer Leif Davis in? An emergency loan.
They have that guy. They have that guy in Ndombele who used to play for Spurs, but I guess he wouldn't be doing us any favors.
I mean, to be honest, I suspect. Let's have a look at the Ligue 1 table. I suspect PSG will be able to rest.
Nice are in fifth.
They're just the 22 points clear with a game in hand in Ligue 1. So something tells me, like, you know, Lee Kang-in and friends might be playing on Friday night. It may not be the strongest PSG 11 you've ever seen in your life.
Nice have a player called Dante, though, so maybe he can bring a bit of his inferno, and
that'd be nice.
That'd be good ahead of our game against PSG next week. So.
Is he the Brazilian centre half? I suspect it probably is.
He is, yeah.
Yes, it is him. Once of
Bayern Munich.
Borussia Mönchengladbach, Bayern Munich. Yeah, exactly. Well, look, I think it's a good thing that we've got those couple of extra days.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Extra prep time and, you know, maybe a bit of extra energy as well. There is, of course...
And also,
go on.
Palace's league season is arguably even more inconsequential than ours at this point in time.
And they have a
huge
an FA Cup semi-final on... Saturday, right?
Against Aston Villa.
Ooh.
And they are ensconced in 11th place in the Premier League. Like, they literally have nothing to play for. And some of their recent league performances, I think, are indicative of that. So it's not a bad sort of fixture for us to have ahead of PSG.
Yeah, Oliver Glasner picking 11 Crystal Palace Academy players on Wednesday night would be quite something.
Yeah,
I think you should.
Look now. What happens between and then between the PSG games, we're at home to Bournemouth.
Tricky game.
Right, you to start, I hope.
Tricky game, in fairness. But yeah,
I mean, the points were important, weren't they? I think there was a stat that we dropped 11 points in our previous 7 league games, which is it's not a great run, really.
11 points in our previous 7.
Yeah, so 11 from 21.
Gosh, when you look at the table.
I know. It has been quite sort of... I think there's that thing of, like, a lot of us sort of gave up on the title relatively early, or certainly when all the injuries really began to hit home and the January transfer market closed without a significant addition. And then Kai Havertz went down. But when you do look at the run of league games, like, it's difficult because maybe our eyes come off the ball a bit and maybe we've been focused on other priorities, but we certainly have let quite a few points slip past us.
Yeah.
Home defeat to West Ham, obviously, at the end of February was a bad one, but, drawing at Old Trafford, you'd expect us to beat that United side, really. Drawing at home to Brentford, drawing away at Everton.
Yeah.
We've not, it's been a procession for Liverpool really since about February, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. But look, let's not get hung up on that. at this moment in time. You know, we have potentially something very exciting to achieve still this season. So I think, you know, we can do the full analysis of that at a later date, I guess. And we can rue whatever we rue. But if we come out at the end of this season with a first ever Champions League, I don't know that people will give too much of a shit about what happened in the Premier League this season. You know?
I think that's well said.
Yeah. All right. Right. We will take a little break here. We will come back with your questions and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer the questions that you sent to us on Blue Sky at gunnerblog.bsky.social and also at arseblog.com and also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. And please remember that for the month of April, we are donating every single penny we make from Patreon to charity for really, really good causes. You can find details of those good causes in the show notes. So if you want to get extra content and you want to help those good causes, all you got to do is go to patreon.com/arseblog. Sign up now. You only have to stay for a month if that's all you want, but know that your subscription will go to help people who really need it. And one of the other benefits that you get if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon and also a Patreon member of our friends at Arsenal Vision is advanced notice and ability to buy tickets for our live show, which is happening on May 17th at Union Chapel. We're back in the hood again, James. Union Chapel this year after a little jaunt to Ali Pali last year. But we're at Union Chapel May 17th, the night before the Newcastle game, the final home game of the season. Tickets will be going on sale on Wednesday, 1st to our Patreon members. They sell out very quickly, so if you want a chance to get them, that is probably your best way. There will be some tickets on general sale on Thursday as well, but if you want to sign up to our Patreon, you will get advance notice and advance linkage and all that kind of stuff to get tickets for what we hope will be an exciting and fun live show as we look ahead to, you know, the thing that we talked about at the end of the first half.
Exactly. Yeah, it's our penultimate game of the season, but it might not be our penultimate game of the season.
Our penultimate league game of the season, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And they do, I mean, it sounds hubristic to say this, no one will turn up this year, but they do sell really quickly, so get on it if you want to be there. Yeah,
and it's a good fun night with the boys from Arsenal Vision as well, and all of you guys who attend and help make those evenings a lot of fun and very special indeed. So there you go. Right. Questions. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first, Andrew.
Okay.
I'll go first. Let's go for this one. Magnus Holmberg over on Blue Sky says, with Kiwior's recent performances, do you still think he will leave this summer?
Probably.
Just to jump in.
Yeah.
Calafiori Cheese also said, good morning, chaps. Have Kiwior's recent performances changed your opinion of where we go with him? I thought it was time to move on in the summer, but having seen him get a run at left back and centre back, we're getting a run at left centre back and look solid, as well as factoring in Calafiori's injury woes, I could be persuaded it's a good idea to keep him.
I wouldn't have any issue with keeping him. I really wouldn't. I think he's a decent player.
Yeah.
But as I've said previously, I do think that if you're Jakub Kiwor and you're showing that you're good enough to play for Arsenal at the Bernabeu and help an Arsenal team, be part of an Arsenal team that beats Real Madrid home and away, I think you're going to attract some suitors. And I think, given that you're 25 years of age, you know you've still got Big Gabby ahead of you. You know Calafiori is there as well. Like, are you really content to be a bit part player at Arsenal, which could be a great thing and you could win lots of stuff? Or do you hopefully go into the summer with, an enhanced reputation, maybe, a little medal in your pocket and think, I could go somewhere else and I could play week in, week out for, a club at a decent level. That is my overriding thought with Kiwior. I would be quite happy to keep him, but I suspect that as a pro in his mid-20s, having, not played a great deal over the last little while, the driving factor in all this will be what he wants, and I think he'll want to go and play, and I completely understand that.
Yeah, I to be honest, it's a bit boring, but I feel exactly the same. It exceeded my expectations in terms of his performances. I think he did really well in the Bernabeu, and he and Saliba have got a nice little partnership going there. In a way, as good as he's been, it's sort of been the perfect shop window for him as well. I think if Arsenal are looking to move one or two players on to sort of help with turnover this summer, he's someone who there could be a market, and it could be quite a fruitful market. And if you're Kiwor, I mean, it's always talked about as Italy being the likely destination for him, given his previous time there and his reputation there. I mean, if one of the big Milan clubs come in, and it's like, do you want to go and play every single week in the San Siro, and probably in Europe, that's a pretty hard thing to turn down.
Yeah.
When you know at Arsenal, as things stand, you are a backup, and quite clearly a backup.
Yeah.
If he stays, then I think Arsenal will be totally fine with that, and I'll certainly be totally fine with that. But he may well go, because he's at a point in his career where he probably needs to play.
Sure. And how many times have we had the conversation about, Arsenal need to sell better, Arsenal need to raise funds by, selling players? And I think one of the things that we've discussed is like, do you have to sell a player at a point where you don't necessarily really want to? But that's the way of maximizing. Yeah, that's the way of maximizing their value. And what Kiwor has done, and hopefully, touch wood, will continue to do for the rest of this season, is, as I said earlier, enhance his reputation and play at a good level. And that makes him, A, more attractive to other clubs, but B, it's easier for Arsenal to look for a fee commensurate with that kind of enhanced reputation,
Yeah, absolutely. He was 25 in February. Been here, a couple of years. I just think it's probably the right time, but we shall see. Can I just throw you a hypothetical that was chucked at me in Madrid?
Sure.
And I found it very interesting. I think it was Sam Dean of The Telegraph who asked me, or it might have been Cy Collins of The Standard, not sure. But they said to me, would you sell Calafiori if you got your money back this summer?
Oh.
And I would be curious to hear your thoughts.
It would be tempting.
It would be, wouldn't it? It would be tempting.
I do like him. I like him as a player, and I like him as a character. I think there's a lot to like about, the way he plays. But obviously, we have some concerns about injury. I think he's been... My optimistic glass half full hat on is that he's just been a bit unlucky with injury this season, because two of them have come when he just sort of slipped on the pitch and tweaked his knee, the one with Italy and there was one with us. And there was another one maybe early on where perhaps, it's a player getting used to the rigours of the Premier League and English football.
And a different position as well as a left back.
So I'd like to see more of him, but I think that concern about his injury record would make it tempting, but then that probably means you have to keep Kiwor, So, and he might want to go. So that makes it a very difficult one. I don't think, by the way, that's going to be an issue. I think Mikel Arteta is quite invested in the idea of Riccardo Calafiori, isn't he? So I don't see it happening just yet.
I don't either, but I think it's a good question. You know what I mean? I think it's a bit of a thinker, because I think we all like Calafiori, but it's not just the injuries. It's also that nobody anticipated Mars Lewis Skelly.
Yeah, correct.
Having the impact he's had in that position. So, I mean, of course, if it were to happen, which I don't think it will, it would also give us an opportunity to buy a left back, which we love to do, Andrew. We love to do it.
It's my favourite part of the transfer window.
That and backup goalkeeper. I mean, that's the bit we're all excited for.
For sure.
I think he'll stay, but yeah, it's an interesting one. I went for a delicious pizza in Madrid, Andrew.
I'm glad to hear it. I was hankering some pizza yesterday and I ended up not getting any, so I might correct that today now.
Okay, well, it's a place called Brico Gourmet, and I highly recommend it. It's just like down a little alleyway. It's almost like a sort of very small. It's like a kind of bar more than it is a restaurant.
The best pizza places are like that, down an alley, and it looks like, I don't know if I want to go in there, but then it turns out it's great.
I was like, I want a pizza, and I went on Google Maps, and I put in pizza.
Oh, wow. That's how it works.
I know, incredible. And I there was a place just down the road from my hotel, and it had 889 reviews, and they were like averaged 5-star. And I was like, okay, I got to see what this is about.
Okay.
And this is going somewhere, I promise.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
It was, I mean, this is the best bit of the podcast, probably. This is the bit people really want to know.
Apart from Leandro Trossard laying chocolate eggs.
Yeah. Yeah. So he, the guy who ran it was a lovely guy, Italian guy. Family was from Venice, and they had run a restaurant in Venice for like 50, 60 years. And he had opened his own pizza place in Madrid a couple of years ago and ships in like fresh ingredients from Italy like 3 times a week. It's amazing. He was like, this is the pizza you should have. This is what I recommend. And he was correct. It was delicious.
Okay.
Anyway, he was Italian, and we spoke a lot about football, and we spoke a lot about Riccardo Calafiori.
Okay.
And he was like, here we go. This is where we are. He was like, I watched him a lot last season, and obviously with Italy. He was like, amazing player. But he was like, but I strongly feel his best position is as a left-sided centre-back.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I think Arsenal will only see the best of him when he plays in that position.
I think I agree with that, by the way.
Really? Well, there you go. I just thought it was interesting. I mean, that's certainly where he plays for Italy. It's where he played last year. And he was, he obviously understood the player, knew him well. He was speaking about, how he opens up loads of attacking possibilities, his movement, his ability to carry the ball. But he was like, but going forward and defensively, left back doesn't suit him as well as centre half.
Yeah, I think we've kind of seen that this season. We have seen that a bit, where the fact he's not a traditional left back, has left him a little bit exposed. But again, I don't want to make too much judgment on a guy, in his first season with the club and his first season in English football, and who is, apart from Nwaneri and Lewis Skelly, the youngest member of the squad as well.
He's really young.
Yeah. So there are those elements to it. I think there is something about him that I really want to see sort of explode at Arsenal. But in terms of the question and the way that you posed it, the injuries, they do, particularly I think for Arsenal fans, just make you go,
Yeah, and also, like, if Kiwor was to go, I don't think you could confidently say, well, we've got Calafiori as our backup left centre-back. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like the injuries cast a bit of doubt. You sort of need that backup player to be available, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, that's something Arteta did say of Kiwor, didn't he? He's available. He's always available. And
really? That's interesting.
Yeah. Maybe in the build-up to the first game he played without... or we played without Gabriel. He did say something about that, about Kiwor, whose reliability, again, I don't want to jinx anyone here, and I'm touching wood, has been pretty good. Okay, what about this? We had some questions about Mikel Merino. We had quite a few, like, if Merino and Havertz were both available now, who would you play up front?
Yeah. I was asked that in Madrid, if Havertz is back for the final, who starts? Go on then. What's is that the question?
No. I thought that was interesting, but it's one of those where like I don't know if I know the answer to that actually. So I'm not going to ask it.
We don't pick those ones.
Yeah, exactly. Silent Fox 1 on the Discord. How impressed have you been with Merino this season? I think he's one of the most tactically diverse players in the squad. And I had one from Blue Sky. Sam Elliott, who's Sam I am 666. Uh-oh. I think he's giving the game. But Sam, listen, you can't masquerade as the devil in your social media handle. Anyway, Sam, I am 666.bsky.social. Merino has had to develop plenty to play up front. Do you think that time playing up front has helped equip him for the left 8 role?
Yeah, I think we touched on that. I don't know if it's enabled us to see other aspects of his game that we weren't maybe observing as closely before, or whether it's really been a sort of development opportunity for him and he's improved as a player. But certainly in terms of his impact at Arsenal, his performances at Arsenal, and maybe in terms of our appreciation as well, I think that's part of it. Like, I think not only has he improved, but I think we have also learned to appreciate what he offers.
He's kind of like a slow burn, isn't he? A slow burn of a player where at first you're sort of like, but then, as time has gone on, he has blossomed into the magnificent butterfly or whatever,
Yeah, Olivier Giroud impersonator. I think, you're going to be a slow burn when you get injured in your first training session. I mean, that's an unfortunate reality.
Sure.
And I don't want to be inconsistent. Like, I still think that we could maybe have done slightly more interesting things with that money and with that position. I still think that about last summer. But you cannot question or query the contribution he's made since Kai Havertz went down with injury. I mean, it's been superb.
Yeah. It's one of those where when something like that happens and we say, on a podcast or in whatever analysis that you do, you go, you really need somebody to step up now in the absence of Kai Havertz. And I guess people would have been looking perhaps elsewhere. Like, can Merino fill in, do a job, fill the gap? Yes. Is he going to contribute much in the way of goals and assists? I don't know. You'd be looking at, particularly someone like Martinelli or Trossard as the established or natural forwards, maybe to take up some of that goal scoring slack. But I think he's done a fantastic job, and I actually think it's been beneficial for him in terms of how he is perceived among the fans. Because I think you're right. There was probably like, listen, he's a good player. Is he a brilliant player? Is he quite what we would like for left 8? But that's our preference rather than Mikel Arteta's preference that we're talking about, right? Somebody a bit more creative or what have you. But then, you sign some kind of whiz kid to play as a left 8, a creative left 8, and he does what Merino did yesterday, for example, with that flick for the second goal. You're like, whoa, so maybe we're seeing things in Merino that Mikel Arteta knew were there, but we couldn't quite recognise.
Well, we're no longer, switching him out of left 8 and into up front meant we were no longer looking at him and going, why aren't you Ilkay Gundogan? You know what I mean? Or, Eze or whoever else you might fantasize about in that position. We were looking at him as a kind of alternative to Havertz, a replacement to Havertz. And there are things that he can't do that Kai Havertz can do, absolutely, in terms of sort of, I think, threatening behind and just sort of sheer distance covered. But there are some things that in this spell, I think he's done as well as Kai Havertz, frankly, in terms of, some of his interplay around the edge of the area, some of his finishing has been really excellent. That goal against Madrid, I mean, it's a shame for him that Declan Rice scored 2 absolute beauties, because I think we'd be talking about that finish a lot more otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't really commend him enough for the job he's done in a position that he's never played before. And I do think as well, he seems like a really top bloke. Like he seems like a really good guy and very, very popular in the squad, with the staff, with the wider staff. I think with the media team, he's like a complete joy. You know, he's always enthusiastic, always got something to say, always willing to take responsibility on. So on a personal level, I'm very happy for him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's a good character, good professional, talks really well. He has 13 goal contributions this season. Yeah. I know that's maybe slightly skewed by the fact he's had to play up front and everything else, but I still think that's a very decent return. And, you know, hopefully there's a bit more to come between now and the end of the season. Mikel Merino, Champions League winner against Barcelona. Dancing round the flag, going round and round the flag.
Oh, man.
How about it?
Man.
You on for that?
Tempt me. I'm up for it. Yeah,
all right,
yeah.
Good.
I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no. What have we got here? We had a question about Declan Rice. Now, I will say the questions come from a guy on Blue Sky called @Jack_Rice. So whether he's got a vested interest here, I don't know.
Big Rice at it again, infiltrating
Yes, exactly.
the questions.
Big Rice wielding its influence. So, goodly morning, gents. Do Rice's performances against Real Madrid show that when you do sign a player for £100 million plus, they make it worth it by showing up when it really matters? And does that kind of performance make even more of a case to push the boat out for someone like Isak?
I don't know that you can really link the two things. I think what Arsenal did was recognise that they had something missing in midfield that Declan Rice had all the qualities to provide, you know? And the price tag is, you know, a consequence of buying him from another Premier League club and the fact that he's, you know, English now. So
Now he is.
Now he is, yeah. So I don't know.
If he was Irish, he probably would have cost about half that, I reckon.
It's true, though. It actually is. It's true. It probably would have cost quite a bit less. That English tax, you know, is a real thing. But I don't think it's really about what you paid for him. It's about the fact that he was the guy who was identified and courted, and they had a very, very definite plan for what he could bring to this team. And maybe that plan has changed, of course. I think probably there was a bit more 6 than 8 in the initial thinking, but, you know, his versatility, his all-roundness has shown. There are lots of big money transfers, players who've gone for over 100 million or something close to 100 million, who've never even come close to producing what their price tag says, you know? In some ways, maybe Rice is an exception rather than a rule. You know, look through the Premier League and look through the list of most expensive signings of all time, and not all of those players are a success. Quite a lot of them aren't a success. You know, you could look at Manchester United paying 80, 90 million for Antony, for example. And that got them nothing other than, you know, a waste of 80 or 90 million pounds. So it's not really, for me, it's not really linked. Does it make me more assured that if we spent that big money on Isak, he would be a success? I think he would just be a success at Arsenal because he's a really good player. And Arsenal need a striker. He would fit that role perfectly well. But the fact is, you're going to have to pay a huge amount of money for him. That's just the reality of getting that player from Newcastle. It's not a surefire thing that's connected to his price tag. It's just because he is a good player. So,
yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I think Declan Rice is a really special athlete. I don't think it's mere coincidence that he, in the 2 legs against Real Madrid, was the guy who turned up in such force. I know it was a brilliant team performance, and rightfully so, the manager kind of emphasised that over the 180 minutes. But he won 2 Man of the Match awards. And I don't think that's down to chance or anything like it. I think he has a special capacity to influence games, and that it's very difficult to sort of, he has obvious attributes. He has physical attributes, technical attributes, mental attributes, but I just think that the particular alchemy and cocktail of those attributes has created something quite special. I think he has a sort of nearly supernatural influence on games. And I spoke about earlier about having sort of a few comparisons with players in my mind watching this game against Ipswich. And I think it's one that's been made before, but, we've seen a lot of quite tired or sort of lazy comparisons to a Patrick Vieira in the past. If a new guy comes out of France, if they're of African heritage or whatever, it's like, the new Vieira. Sure. I really do think like the combination of physical and technical attributes and the ability to kind of turn games or control games or dominate games single-handedly, I think Rice genuinely is the closest thing that we've had to a Patrick.
Could not argue with that. With that. I have another question on him. It comes from the Discord. It's from Gunnar. He says, in recent months, it seems Declan Rice has finally arrived as the leader we heard he was at West Ham. Do you see Rice as a future club captain? And would that happen with Martin Odegaard still at the club? Personally, I believe Odegaard was the right selection for the time period coming off of the Aubameyang situation and the club needing to be stabilised. However, as we continue to push for trophies, I'm starting to wonder if a different kind of captain might be beneficial to the squad. And I've seen people talk about that quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, in my video after Madrid, I was like, this is a guy who's going to be the next England captain. He might be the next Arsenal captain. And someone picked me up on it in the comments and was like, what you said, is Odegaard leaving? And I was like, I didn't really put any thought into it. It wasn't so much about, it wasn't really a comment on Martin Odegaard. It was a comment on Declan Rice, if that makes any sense. I can't see a situation where the manager takes the armband off Martin Odegaard. And I'm not sure he needs to necessarily. I think Declan Rice is already behaving like a leader in this team and clearly is such an important figure and part of the group that, I don't see the manager kind of sort of even just purely politically within the changing room, making a change.
No, he can't do that,
Yeah. And ultimately, like, it's just an armband, Like, I know, was it Unai Emery who had, like, the 5 captains or something? And, there was a lot of debate about that, and Arsenal tried to split it as well, even before that, under Wenger. Do you remember there was a time when Gilberto, Gallas and Torre shared the armband? They were named as kind of joint captains, and when Odegaard was named captain, it was like a big symbolic moment because I think it had been Xhaka, right, and then it just sort of got passed around a bit after he was stripped of it. And then so I understand like there was a need to be like, this is our captain, this is a symbol of where we're headed as a club, and Odegaard was absolutely the right person for that. But I no longer feel like. Saka doesn't need the armband. Declan Rice doesn't need the armband. Saliba doesn't need the armband. Gabriel doesn't need the armband. But we know that they're all leaders within the group.
Sure. I think there is a sort of idea of what a captain should be and how they should perform and behave. And maybe, if you're looking at a through line between some of the most captainy captains of all time, let's say a Tony Adams, that you can see that there's a sort of similarity between Tony Adams and a Declan Rice, right? In terms of the way they play and the commitment that they show on the pitch and the leadership they show on the pitch as well. And Odegaard's more quiet, but I think you probably, within that dressing room, nobody's thinking, well, can we win things if Martin Odegaard is captain? I think they view him as a leader, a technical leader. He's a very important part of Mikel Arteta's team and how we play and how we've made progression. But Rice fits that kind of archetypal captain mold better than probably anybody else we have in the team, But I don't think there's any need to change. I think you're absolutely right that Arteta will allow players to demonstrate their leadership, as Rice did, let's say, in that first leg against Real Madrid by taking the free kick and making a decision to have a go at goal when the set-piece coach was looking for a cross to the back post. Those are moments of leadership, I think, that can exist whether you have the armband or not.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right.
Okay. Martin Poland has come back to us on the player of the season issue. Martin says, a follow-up to my player of the season question from before the Real matches. I put Raya, Gabriel, Timber and MLS as candidates, but foolishly suggested Rice and Saka had only given half seasons and were honourable mentions. Clearly it is now a shootout between Rice and Saka. Do you agree?
God, do you know what? I kind of, not that I don't care, but I find it difficult, to make a decision on that because I just feel like there's something still to come this season that might tilt the balance in the direction of, one or two others. Some of those candidates that you mentioned, there could be a moment where, we're talking about that as the decisive moment which elevates them. It could be Rice, it could be Saka, could be Raya, who knows, saving a penalty in the Champions League final against Barcelona before Mikel Merino scores the winner, Something like that could happen. So I don't know. I think certainly in the second half of the season we've seen the best of Declan Rice, though. That is for sure. So maybe there's a recency there that will get people going that way. Gabriel, I think, was one of the best and most consistent players this season, but he's going to miss the last 2 months, 3 months. Does that play a part? I don't know. I think I'll make my decision much more towards the end. What about you?
I think what the question shows is that there's always a bit of a kind of recency bias with these decisions. Mm-hmm. And what you do in the last couple of months of the season sometimes matters most, right? But when you look at contributions across the campaign, I think Declan Rice is emerging as a big candidate, and in those Madrid games he had sort of a headline contribution that I imagine will carry some weight in that debate. But yeah, we'll see. I hope they're all contenders by the end of the season because that will mean something's gone well.
Yeah, pushing each other. I mean, Saka, 3.5 months out, whatever it is, and he still has 17 goal contributions from, maybe it's more than that. In all competitions, hang on. It's 25 goal contributions, 11 goals and 14 assists for Bukayo Saka, which is still an amazing number, isn't it? When you consider how long he's been out. So he's got to be in that conversation as well. Declan Rice as well has got some good numbers going on this season too in terms of goals and assists. It's 10 assists and 7 goals. So, he is pushing, I think. What about this one? Where is it gone? It was more about the Premier League. Hang on. Oh yeah, here it is from Freddie LJ. Does the Premier League have a problem in that the only thing likely to be decided on the final day is potentially who finishes between 4th and 7th for anything meaningful, with the league title and relegation decided weeks from the end?
I must say, I think that battle for the Champions League places looks pretty interesting to me. Mm-hmm. Maybe I wouldn't be saying that if we'd been dragged into it a bit more. But, you've got Newcastle in 3rd and Villa in 7th within 2 points of each other. So, frankly, anything could happen there.
Yeah.
The title race, when you look at the injuries that we've sustained, I think it's pretty clear why that gap is what it is. I do think the big problem is at the bottom. I really do. I think I think is it the second consecutive year where the 3 promoted teams are all going down.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a concern. Like, how can teams come up from the Championship and be competitive?
And let's remember, Southampton were a pretty well-established Premier League side. I know they've been a bit yo-yo, but they've been in the Premier League a lot, and they've come up and had, maybe is it the second worst season ever after?
And Leicester as well, not too long ago, were champions in a Champions League team. I know that was kind of the outlier, but they are a club with a significant history in the Premier League who've just found it impossible to compete. So that would be my worry. I think it's really important. It's probably not in the interests of most of the big Premier League clubs, but I think it's really important for the league that teams can come up and be competitive.
Are Brentford maybe the last team that sort of come up and really firmly establish themselves as a Premier League side season after season after season?
Yeah.
When were Brentford promoted to the Oh God, it's not that long ago, 2021, So I think Brentford have shown that it can be done, but I think they are, it's fair to say, a very smart club in terms of their recruitment of players, and also I think they've got a very, very good manager as well. In Thomas Frank, which I'm not sure is the case with the clubs that are going to get relegated this season. Southampton, gone through a couple of managers, haven't they? Leicester, Van Nistelrooy's a hilarious joke, which I enjoy. Ipswich, I think Kieran McKenna is obviously a good coach and did very well. There was talk of him getting the Manchester United job when he got Ipswich promoted. But yeah, maybe he needs a bit more time as well to sort of establish himself. But yeah, it is difficult. I think that is the big factor, though. The clubs coming up from the Championship just yo-yoing straight back down can't be good.
Yeah, so Leeds and Burnley are in the driver's seat for automatic promotion this year, and then playoffs. Sheffield United, have had a bit of a collapse. Otherwise, they would have been automatically promoted. So I guess they'll be favourites going into the playoffs. Those are all clubs with varying degrees of Premier League pedigree. We shall see. But I think that's the area of the table that I think is alarming. The rest, I think, is all easily explained. And actually, I think that how competitive it is in the battle for top 5 is a positive, actually. I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have any big gut feeling? Forest dropped out of the top 5 for the first time in a while.
Yeah. They're playing tonight, aren't they? They're playing Tottenham tonight.
So that'll be 3 points.
That'll be 3 points for them. So that'll be them back into third place. I did feel like they would drop off. Just felt like they've been punching above their weight a bit this season, and maybe when it comes to the crunch. Do you remember there was a couple of seasons? Who was it? Who did Brendan Rodgers manage? Apart from Liverpool.
Leicester?
Was it Leicester? Were there not 2 seasons?
They had a couple of years where they fell at the final hurdle.
Yeah, exactly. They were there all season long in the top four. And then right at the end when the pressure came, they fell out of the top 4. And I always felt like that might happen a bit for Forest, because of the way they play as well. They invite a lot of pressure. And their games are quite often decided on fine margins, and a couple of them have gone against them. But hopefully tonight they can put some goals beyond Tottenham and move themselves back in. It is very interesting. Villa, Forest, Chelsea, City, Newcastle. I don't think we have time to look at the fixtures that they have left and who is playing who. Are there games between those clubs as well, which might make it very interesting. But yeah, top 5, I think, is it for Champions League this season? So
it's looking like that. Yeah. And yeah, Forest as well, by the way, do have an FA Cup semi-final to play too.
Yeah.
City. So their season might end in glory in another way. Who knows?
Might indeed. All right. Have you got any more?
I have a couple. What have I got here? Yeah, Mikel's Boys Forever. I thought it was interesting. Said, "Goodly morning. Has Arteta built a team ideal for cup competitions without us noticing?"
No.
To me, it seems that we as a fan base, I'll finish. I've started, so I'll finish.
Okay.
But I had the same reaction. To me, it seems that we as a fan base have been so focused on the Premier League that going far in the Champions League has not been something we've viewed as possible this season.
I think,
but yes, our domestic cup record would suggest otherwise.
Yeah, I think so. And also, I'm not sure this is a team that we've built. I mean, we have to a certain extent, but I think this season it has been a sort of hastily assembled kind of patch-up job in many ways, that has happened to go further in the Champions League than Arsenal have done in the last, 16 years since we got to a semi-final. So I don't think it's by design. I think we've just had to cope with quite a bit, along the way. Actually, I had a question about that as well, which I did want to ask you. And then I want to do a couple of quick ones to finish off. So Bumpy Lanes on B-Sky, he says, I know it's only Ipswich and the red card league situation is a factor, but our game seems more able to withstand player rotation right now. Is this the silver lining of our injuries this season? We've had to adapt, and adaptation has become a feature, not a bug.
Is that the silver lining? I think so. I mean, I think we've been sort of, like you, I agree, we've kind of been forced to cut our cloth a little bit. And we've ended up as a very sort of sustainable unit, reliable unit that's maybe less sort of hinged on individual talent. But is that a silver lining? I don't know. I think it's just been a sort of necessity, if that makes sense.
It would be an unsilver lining if we didn't adapt, though, I do think what it has made the team a bit more, like, I know there have been some results in the Premier League that haven't been great, but I think what we've seen from this team is that there is a slightly robust in terms of, our tactical preparation and our ability to deal with most opposition, Like the thing that we certainly are for the most part is really difficult to beat. We're a hard team to beat, and that I think has played out over the course of this season, and certainly in the two Champions League quarterfinals. Some quick ones.
I do think that we, as a fan base, we've probably been quite fixated on the Premier League, and I think sort of the natural order of things is to think about winning the Premier League before you win the Champions League. So it's kind of understandable that we've been in that frame of mind. But clearly the way this season is panning out could present us with an opportunity to sort of leapfrog and win the Champions League.
Yeah, the only thing you'd say about that is that, like, progress in the Champions League only becomes evident as you get to the final stages, whereas your week in, week out, your bread and butter of the Premier League is something you're dealing with all the time,
That's true. And also, just like, I think cup competitions, any knockout competition is a less... I do think it's a less... I still think the league is the best measure of performance between August and May, ultimately.
Yeah.
But, none of us are saying no to a Champions League.
Okay, what about this from The Grove, an Arsenal podcast, thegroveafc.bsky.social. He said, in minute 15 of the Ipswich Live blog, you said Trossard nutmegged O'Shea with the finish for the goal. As a seasoned footballer, surely you know that for a nutmeg, the ball needs to be collected on the other side, preferably accompanied by the word nuts. Am I wrong? Did he nutmeg him, or is it just a finish through the legs?
I would call that a nutmeg. Because I think if you put the goal between a keeper's legs and into the back of the net, you're entitled to say nuts.
Yeah.
You don't have to collect it on the other side.
No.
But listen, get in touch, guys, if I'm wrong. That's my understanding of the vernacular.
Yeah. We don't want to sort of piss off the nutmeg purists here.
The culture war that will now... that we've just incited.
Yeah, exactly. But I would have, if I had applied that finish, I might have shouted nuts while I was on the ground, despite the fact I didn't collect the ball because it was in the back of the fucking net. So, speaking of Trossard, Adam Turks on the Discord says, how can Trossard look like a wee boy when he smiles, but an old man when he frowns?
What a good question. What a good question.
Do you know what it is? It's all the effort of laying those eggs.
Right.
It takes a lot out of you. You know, it makes your skin less supple. So when you're smiling, it's all stretched, and then when you frown, it gets crinkled up. It's like when he's squatting down and going.
He does have to frown to get it out.
Yeah, he's like, oh, God.
The furrowed brow.
This is a big egg.
I hope this gets back to him, and for his next goal celebration, instead of the sort of
Binoculars,
spectacle look, whatever it is, the binoculars, he squats down by the corner flag.
And everyone's look, it's a Cadbury's cream egg.
Yeah, incredible. He must have had that in there the whole game. Impressive, really.
It's like
I thought he was running weird today.
It's like when Aubameyang used to have the masks. You know, had them in his shorts.
It's a bit like that, isn't it? Yeah. The good, like, if the referees are like, we're cracking down on players having masks and stuff, we're going to search their pockets and, look in their socks. Trossard will be like, they're never going to find my egg. So I'll put that. Yeah, I'll tell you. Good luck, Mr. Referee. Good luck, PGMOL.
Yeah.
That'll really stick it to the PGMOL if we can smuggle an egg onto the pitch inside Trossard.
Inside, actually.
We should have picked a bigger player. Really. But we'll try.
We'll try our best. Final one. I know we've had questions about Mikel Arteta's hair, but everybody was kung fu fighting says, deeply important question. How often do you think the gaffer goes to the hairdresser? It's never longer or shorter. Seriously, how does he do it? And we've talked about the Lego-ness of the hair, but it is never, at no point do you ever see a Mikel Arteta press conference and go, oh, he's had a haircut. Remember, sometimes Arsene would be, it'd get a bit wild and then he'd have a nice tidy haircut. It's always the same. Always the same length.
Some people claim it's like Action Man hair, don't they? Where it's just it's not real hair. It's just sort of a permanent, almost like a microphone. His hair. I'm looking at my microphone now and thinking that does resemble Mikel Arteta's head somewhat. I don't know. I mean, my guess is he's having it cut very regularly, like tiny trims all the time.
Once a week
would be my guess.
Yeah.
I must say, I thought for the Madrid tie, I don't wish to cast aspersions here, but he walked out for his press conference in Madrid. Arteta press conference, Madrid. I'm Googling it now. And I did think it looked blacker than black, like intensely black.
The old Grecian 2000 black, the Just for Men effect. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe. A little bit of boot polish in there. I don't know.
Well, listen, we have a former manager, naming no names, Unai Emery, who absolutely has got the old Just for Men going on there, because I saw a picture of him with his beard slightly grown. And look, he's a man of his age. He is a man of his age. There's nothing wrong with it. Got the old salt and pepper beard, quite grey. That's normal. It's fine. But it's completely at odds with a jet black head of hair that looks like as black as, somewhere an egg might come out of.
Yeah. I mean, Arteta is immaculate. I mean, it's not just the hair. The stubble is usually pretty perfectly pitched as well. Eyebrows. There were suggestions early on that he might be AI. You know what I mean? Like, he feels quite computer generated in his appearance.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's the same magic. Brett Goldstein has the same thing, where it's like he looks the same all the time. What the hell?
Some people are like that,
Yeah.
Who was I talking to about? I was talking to somebody about there was a documentary about Boyzone. And three of them look exactly the same, just a bit older. But then the other guy, Mikey, if he passed you by in the street, you go, no way is that guy. He, he does not look the same as he did when he was in the band. Some people just like older versions of themselves. Other people, you're just like, who the hell's that guy?
But listen, as someone, in the media, I think the people who look the same they're making some effort to maintain that, you know?
Right.
Like, I think, and I actually think this is a really interesting thing to observe about the Premier League. Like, I think if you looked at the managers in the Premier League like 20, 30 years ago, and the absolute state of them physically, and you look at the managers today with their like perfect teeth and jet black hair, there's definitely been a shift in our expectations. Maybe it's just a wider thing about figures who are in the public eye or the media. But yeah, it's sort of symbolized by like Klopp's teeth, I guess. There's definitely an expectation now that managers look the part. And I think Mikel is probably...
He's a natural, though. Mikel is a natural. You know, he's a handsome guy.
I think he's aware of that, but I think he's also blessed, isn't he?
But he's always been, I think, you know, very not conscious, but like, you know, the way he's looked after himself as a footballer. I don't think he just give that up. Well, some people do. Let's say Wayne Rooney, right? He definitely isn't living the same lifestyle he did when he was a footballer. Or maybe he is.
I mean, to be honest, I don't think it's that different.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
He's just running less.
I've got that one wrong.
But I think you're right. Yeah, I think Arteta really does look after himself. And I actually think appearances and aesthetics, like, they fall within his standards, you know. I think it's important to him how the players look and present themselves and how the club presents itself. And I think he considers himself part of that and feels he needs to set an example and be like a credible, appealing figurehead. And rightly or wrongly, I think looks is part of that now.
Yeah. He's never looked scruffy, has he? Never looked scruffy.
No. Well, no, it's all going to shit when he turns up with like a beard and grey hair, you know?
Yeah, exactly. A big shock, like Doc Brown from Back to the Future.
Yeah, and I don't see it. I can't imagine that. I think he'll quit before the hair goes grey. He won't let that happen.
I can't
That'll
be seen
be his
in
line
public.
in the sand.
Yeah. I haven't achieved what I want to achieve, but my hair's going grey, so that's it.
Yeah.
Time to
That's
call.
it, guys.
Time to call it. All right.
Time for me to leave the cave.
Right, we better leave it there. We are going to have an episode of The 30 for you tomorrow. That's over on Patreon, looking back at all the weekend's Premier League action. There is a game tonight, so we're going to do that tomorrow morning for you, and we will as well have a Crystal Palace preview podcast. So it's all going on Patreon, patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, though, folks, take it easy, and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.